In this tutorial, we'll create a Wordle clone using HTML, TailwindCSS, and Vanilla Javascript. Follow along as we build the game board, style it, and add game logic. Whether you're a Python developer like me, curious about JavaScript, or experienced in other languages, join me on this fun coding project. Before we get started, I want to mention that in this project, I will assume you have a basic knowledge of HTML, TailwindCSS, and JavaScript fundamentals. Also, I wanted to mention that in the description box below, there's a link to this app if you want to play around with it, and also a link to this project in GitHub, which includes a detailed README file with step-by-step instructions similar to what's in this video. So right now we're going to hop into a demo of the game. We're going to start by taking a look at the layout. So at the top here, we have the title of the game, Wordle. Here we have an instruction box that gives high-level instructions on how to play the game. Then we have the game board where you'll be guessing your words. Next we have the keyboard where you can enter the letters, and the button where you could submit your guess. And then of course a delete button if you decide you want to switch letters. Down here we've got a sort of a game board here that tells you how many games you've won or lost. And then we have the play button. So to start a game or to start a new game, you have to push the play button to start. We'll get into a quick demo of the game and I'll play a couple of times and we can see sort of how this works. So first I want to show that if you start just pushing a letter, you're going to get this alert here saying that you have to push the play button to start the game. Basically that's because this is how we set the game word. So we want to just make sure we push this at the beginning. So I'll push play. I've done that. And now I'm going to submit my guess. I'm going to start with tiers here. And you can see we've got highlighting. So yellow means that the letters are in the right word, but not in the right spot. So I'm going to try another guess. I'm just going to try for letters right now. So I'm going to go with cough. And we've got another letter. So I'm going to try front. That is the word. So here we've got the game word alert, the game one alert, excuse me, and now we can see it's all highlighted in green because all the letters are correct. And you can see that the game's won as updated. So let's play again. I'm going to guess another word, plane. I didn't spell plane right. Right now you can tell that I obviously don't have a dictionary in there, so any word is going to work right now. If you want to be fancy, you can implement spell checking to make sure valid words are submitted. I'm going to go with cough again. Nothing. All right. Super. Alright, I'm going to go with frosh. I don't even know if that's a word. Okay. We've got a couple of letters. I'm just going to keep going, keep it moving, even though I know some of these letters I've already guessed, but I just want to show what it looks like when we lose a game. So the word was frisk. We lost, and you can see the game's loss has been updated below here. So you can continue playing, you can push play again, and it'll reset the board. So this is the game that we will be building today. Let's get into the build. Alright, so getting started with the build, I have a new project open here in VS Code. I've just created a folder called JavaScript Wordle, and right now the only file in here is this index.html. So to get started, I'm just going to create a boilerplate using Emmet, so HTML5 boilerplate here. We're going to add a title to our project, let's just call it Wordle. And then in terms of adding the CSS, I'm just going to pull up right here. This is the TailwindCSS website. Because this is just a simple project, we want to use the CDN, which means we can just add this script tag here and use TailwindCSS. I think ideally if you were actually doing a project that you wanted to deploy in your web app, you might want to use the CLI and install it using npm, but we're not going to do that today. So I'm just going to take this script tagged here and we are going to add it here at the bottom of our head. And now we've got CSS. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to add a title for our project. So first thing we're going to do, I'm just going to put a whole container. I love to put a container around my projects. And in CSS, there is a class called container. So I'm going to use that. I'm also going to implement a couple other things. So we're going to use flexbox. We're going to use a flexbox column. We're going to justify everything center and item center. And we're going to put a margin. So that's just setting up the container for a project. Then we're going to put a title in here. So I'm just going to go here, add a little comment here. This is the title. And I actually am just going to copy and paste this in so you don't have to watch me type all day. But we're just going to add an H1 tag here with the Wordle title here. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to push this button here, go live, which should open it up here in the browser. And you can see here that we've got Wordle here in the browser. Next we are going to add the instruction box. So we saw that there in the when I did the demo. This is another item I'm just going to take and copy into this main container here. So we've got the instructions. So for the instructions, what I've done is we just got a div here, and in the div we've got basically the a paragraph tag basically with the instructions and a couple of list items here. So let me just make sure everything's formatted here, save it, and then if we go back to our project, we can see that the instructions are now valid here. If we go back here, you can see that in this div, we've added a border with a background. Slate is just like a gray, rounded, just some basic formatting here with Tailwind to add the instructions box. So that is working as expected. The next item we're going to do is to create the Wordle board. Now this is something I'm definitely going to just copy and paste in here. So you don't have to watch me type because this is a lot going on here. So if we go here to game board, let me just indent this. You can see it's a lot of text here. And that should be, yeah. So again, another div container for the board. Here I'm just using a form. So it doesn't matter, the action doesn't actually matter for this, but this is a form with a bunch of inputs. So you can see here for word 1, this is one row on the Wordle board, and we've just formatted sort of what the input boxes should look like. So I've got 6 of these, there's 6 words that we can use for Wordle included in this form, and I'm using again ID to identify those. So when we get into the JavaScript, we can just target the IDs with our query selector and make it nice and easier because we are using classes we're using for Tailwind. So that's what I've done. So if we hop back over here to the browser, you can see we've got our form here with our input boxes. So 6 rows of all these input boxes. I deactivated them so you can't click into them like you can for a regular form. So you can see it's got this disabled status, so that's what I've done there. And then we'll just enter the letters in there using JavaScript once we move further along in the project. So that's how we're creating the Wordle board. The next item that we are going to work on is the keyboard. So I'm going to go in here and paste this for the keyboard, and again some indenting to be done here. So the keyboard is similar. So we've got a container for the keyboard, and we've got 3 rows. So row 1, this is basically a QWERTY keyboard. So row 1 has all these keys. You can see QWERTY. And then these are formatted so that they're rounded and colored in the text. And then again, we can target these with the ID of key. And then the second row of letters here is similar. The third row we have a bunch of letters. And then at the bottom, we've got a couple of buttons, right? So we've got the submit guess button that allows us to submit our word, and the delete button to let us to delete letters that we've entered. So that's what the keyboard looks like. If we go back to our project in the browser, you can see here's what it looks like. So we've got our 3 rows of letters, as we talked about, and then the 2 buttons to submit and to delete. So that's how we set up the keyboard. And the next item that we're going to talk about is the game status. Let's call it game status, I think, or game tracking is what I've put in here. But we're just going to copy this in and we'll talk about it. So here we've got game tracking. So we've got the scoreboard here where you can see number of games won and the number of games lost, and we can just update this HTML text when we get into the JavaScript as we win and lose games. And then the play button to kick off the start of the game, or if we want to reset the game, we'll have to push that button. So that's how that started. And then just at the bottom, we are going to import our JavaScript that we're going to be working on. So I'm just going to put this all the way at the bottom right before the body tag. We've just got a script tag, and we're going to create this main.js file and be updating it throughout the project. But this is how we set up the HTML. I don't want to get too crazy detailed on this because I'm going to assume we all know HTML and Tailwind, and you're able to create something similar to this on your own. But that's the setup of the HTML. Next, we're going to get into the JavaScript and start getting this functional. Alright, so now I've created our main.js file, and we're going to start getting into adding functionality to our game. So the first thing we want to do is to set up some event listeners to allow us to click on the keys and trigger functionality. So to start off, we're going to create a variable to select the keys. So here is our variable. I've got the keys. As you remember, if we go down to the keyboard here, all the keys have an ID of key. So here in our query selector, we're selecting everything with the ID of key, and those should identify the keys. Then we're going to create an event listener. So this is looping through all of the keys that we've gotten because it's a query selector all, and then anytime there is a click, we're going to trigger a function. We're going to call this function enter letter. So let's take a look at this function. Our enter letter function is going to take the click event, and we are going to create a variable which is going to take what we clicked on and select the inner text of that, which is going to be the letter basically. And for now, we're just going to console log out what that letter is. So let me just go here into inspector, and let me just actually throw this on the bottom here so we can see the console. Now if we go to the keyboard and I push D, you can see D has been logged. C has been logged. So this function's working. Up next, we're going to create an array to store the words that we are entering here in the game. We're going to create an array to store the words that the user is guessing once they've entered it in using the keyboard that we've just set up. So first what we're going to do is create a new variable here. So this variable, I'm calling it current word, and it's just an empty array. We're going to update this enter letter function like so. So what I've done is that once we've got the letter, what we're going to do is if the current word is less than 5, right? If it's 5, then it's filled up all those letters. We don't want to have any letters longer than that. So if it's less than 5, then we want to update the array with the letter. So we're going to add it on. If the current word is 5 or more, then we want to set up an alert. Actually, I don't know why this is a console.log. We want it to be an alert to the screen that this also doesn't make any sense. So we want to alert to the screen to say word can only be 5 letters. That's a little bit more accurate. And then we're just going to console.log the current word just so to make sure this is working as expected. So I'm just going to go ahead and save that. We're going to go over here to our game board, And here I'm just gonna enter in a word. So my signature word here, you can see it in the console. It's logging every time we put a word, and this is the array. You can see that it's getting my signature word here, tears. So tears is in here, and if I go more than 5, we get the alert. So that's working as expected. So the next step we have in our process is we want to be able to submit a word once they click the submit guess button and store it. So to start off, what we want to do is we want to create a variable to find that submit guess button. So here we have our new variable submit, which is just using the query selector to find the item with the ID key enter, which is what the submit button has. And then for that, after we do that, we also are going to create a new array. So we have this array called words guess. So once the user clicks a button and submits their guess, we are going to update this array with the word that was guessed. So right now we're going to set up some functionality to use these new variables. So first we're going to set up an event listener. So here we've got an event listener listening to the submit button. On click, we're going to create a new function guess word. So let's do that right now. Alright, so here in the guess word function, we're going to have a couple of new functions that we're going to talk about in a second. But basically this check game function is just going to return a true or false whether the game is active or not. So if the game is active, we're going to check the current word length, and if the length is 5, we're going to push the current word onto the array. So what this join is just doing is, since current word is an array of letters, we're just going to put the letters together to create a word and then add that to the words guessed array. We're going to create a function that's going to reset the current word so that it's an empty array again. And then we're just going to log our words guessed so that we can understand that that's working. And then for whatever reason that this if statement is not true, then the game is over. So we want to talk about our check game function. For now, what the check game function is going to do is just going to see if our words guessed array is less than 6. So if the user has 6 guesses, then the game is over. So basically this is just checking to see that they have enough guesses left to submit it. And we'll be updating this as we move forward a little bit more. But for now, I think that's good enough. And then our resent current word function, which we're triggering here, is just, like I said before, it's setting the current word back to an empty array so that we can be ready for the next guess that the user has. So let's go here onto the screen and refresh this. And what we're going to do is we're going to submit a word. So I'm going to put in my signature word here, tears, and I'm going to click the submit guess button. So you can see here in the console that the current word array, we join those all together, put it in a word, and put it in our new words guessed array, tears. So that is working as expected. The next step we want to do is we want the ability to have the letters that the user is clicking on appear on the game board. So to do this, we're going to create a few more new variables. So first, we are going to create a bunch of variables. So this represents each row on the game board here. Each row on the game board here first is first word through sixth word, and these are all identified by these IDs here in the HTML. And then we're going to put all those into an array. So we have an array called words displayed, and we've got all 6 of those rows identified there. So with those variables set up, what we're going to do is in our enter letter function, we're going to add a new function here. So we're going to call this function letters on screen. It's going to take the current word that we've gotten. So right now we know that the user has clicked on a letter, and we have found what that letter is from the inner text, and right now, and we're adding it to the array, but we also want to add it so that we can see it on the screen. So that's what this new function is. So we're going to create this new function down here, and it's letters on screen. Like we said, it's going to take in the current word, and what we're going to do is I'm going to put in a word tears. So you can see that all the letters are showing up here on the first word. If I push submit guess, that updates our array words guess. So now it has a length of 1. So if we start pushing buttons again, our letters on screen is going to say, oh, we're on the next row. So if I start putting another word, super, it knows it should be on the second row. And if I push them again, if I put another word in here, cough, it's going to know it's on the third row. So that is working as expected. We can move on to our next item. Alright, so next we're going to set up the functionality to allow users to delete letters by hitting the delete key. So to start off, we need to add a new variable here. So I'm calling this variable backspace, and it's looking at the ID backspace, which is connected to this button. So now we need to set up an event listener to recognize when that is clicked, and that will trigger a new function, which we're going to call delete letter. So we're going to add delete letter right below enter letter here. So this new function is going to remove a letter from the current word array. So if we recall, as we push letters, we're appending the letters to this current word array, and so if we push a delete button, we want to remove it there. So what we're going to do first is we will trigger a function remove on screen, which we'll create in a second, but what we're going to do is we're going to pop the letter off of the array, and then we're just going to console log it to the screen just so that we can see that it's working. Next, we're going to create this remove on screen. So this function is going to remove it from the array. This function that we're going to create delete on screen, which we're going to put right below letters on screen here, is going to remove the letter from the screen. So what we're going to have is the word's going to come in. Again, we are going to, I believe I need a let here as well. We are going to get the index of so we know what row we're looking at, what letter we're looking at, and we're going to identify the box, the last box, and we're going to change the value to nothing. So those are all the functions we need, and let's test this out. So if we go back here to our game, I'm going to put in the word tears again, and you can see here is our current word array. If I push the delete button, it has popped the S off of the array, and then also you can see on the screen it has removed the letter there. So that's working. We've set that up. On to the next item. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to set up the functionality to check to see if the game is won. So basically if the word that the user entered matches the word that the game has selected. So in order to do that, we need to first of all set the game that the word has selected, or the game word. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new variable called word, and right now we're just going to hard code it. So the word is tears, my favorite word. And then we're also going to create a flag. So we're creating this flag game active, set it as true for now. It's just so you know that, whether the game is active or not. Once you win the game or you lose the game, the game active flag is going to turn to false, and we'll get into that as we move forward. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to update our function for guess word. So here we have the guess word function, and what we're going to do is we are going to add another if statement in here. So in this statement that I've just added, we're checking to see the length of the word that's being guessed, and if it's less than 5, we want an alert. So I think we could see in one of the previous parts of this lesson, if I entered a word that was 3 letters and click submit guess, that was working. So right now we want to resolve this so that the word must be 5 letters, or else we're going to get an alert. So that's the first thing we're going to do. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to update this function check game. So here we're going to add some things here. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to get the current word, and we're going to join the array so it's actually a word, right? And we're going to compare that word to the word that we just hard-coded, which right now is tears. Eventually we'll make this so that the game is picking a random word. But for now, we're going to compare the word the user entered to that word. And if it's the same thing, they've won the game, and we're going to inactivate the game. If it's not, then the user loses. So that is the functionality. I believe that should be everything so that we can test this out for now. So let's go over to our game. Let's just make sure I save this. and refresh this. So I'm going to check a word fears. We know that's not the word. And then we're going to check the word tears, which is the word. And you can see that we've got game 1, game over. So that's working. We can check whether the user has submitted a winning word. So we're going to add some more functionality to make this a little bit more visually apparent as we move forward. All right, so the next step is we are going to add the functionality that allows us to change the colors of the boxes on the guess. So as you know in Wordle, if you guess a word that's not the winning word, but it has some matching letters, if the matching letters are in the right position, the box turns green. If the matching letters are in the word but in the wrong position, they turn yellow. So that's the functionality that we're going to implement right now. So to start off, variable word, what we're going to do is we're going to change this to game word because I'm using the variable word a couple of different places and it's a little bit confusing. So I want to update that variable to game word, and then I think also in one of our functions here, check game here, we want to update it there just so it's clear, because we are using word as an input to a couple other functions, and like right here where it's talking about the current word, and I want to avoid confusions. So with that, what we're going to do, the first step is we are going to look at our guess word function here, and this is where we are going to add a new function. So we're going to add a reference to this check guess function where we're going to pass in the current word, which is the word that the user is guessing. So let's go ahead and create this function. So to start off, we've got this function with the word passed in, which is the current word the user is guessing. So to start off, we're going to create a variable here, which is the game word array. So we're going to take the game word, split it up into an array. And we're going to loop through each letter in that word. If that letter is in the guessed word that the user has, we're going to turn it yellow. So we're going to have this new function yellow on screen. So let's go up here somewhere, and we're going to create this new function yellow on screen, which is going to take in a position. And what we're going to do is basically this variable select row is going to figure out which row we're looking at. This variable box is going to figure out which box within the row we're looking at, and we're going to take that position within the array, it's basically an index, and turn it yellow. So that's what this function's doing. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our check guess function, and we're going to add another item. So in addition to that, what we're going to do is we need to understand when we need to turn it green. So this for loop is just going to loop through the numbers 0 through 4, which is the different indexes for the positions in the box here on the word. And if the letter in the game word matches the letter in the user's guess word, then we're going to turn it green. So we're going to create a new function, green on screen. So let's do that. Green on screen looks pretty much the same as yellow on screen, except for we're turning the background color green. So that's how that's going to work. The last thing we need to do to get this working right now is that we need to update the check game function. So the check game function, just to be clear, the check guess function is only checking that specific word that the user has guessed. The check game function is actually seeing, is the word the game word? So here is where we need to check to see if we want to turn all of the letters green. So right here, we're going to add a new function called all green, and we're going to pass in the current word. So basically this is saying if this is the winning word, we want to turn all of the letters green here. So what we're going to do up here is add a new function for the winning guess, and again, we're going to figure out what row we're talking about and which boxes we want to look at, and this is just basically going to loop through every box and turn the background green. So this should be working now. Let's just make sure that this is saved. Go back here to our project, and I'm going to put in a word that is not a word, but I know it's got some both matching. So yeah, the word is tears, just to remind you. So E and A are in the word, but they're not in the right spot, so they're yellow, and S is in the right spot, so it's there. And then if we put the right word in, which is tears, and submit, all of them turn green. So that functionality is working. We can move on to the next step. The next step that we want to do is we want to add functionality to this play button. So to do that, to start off, we want to add a variable here to identify that button. So I'm calling it reset because that's what the ID is on that. And then we want to add here at the bottom, we want to add an event listener here to understand when that button is clicked. And then we're going to create a new function, new game, to be triggered when that button is clicked. So here is the new game function that we're creating. In this function, when the button's clicked, what we're going to do is this variable is identifying the game board, which is this board here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to clear all the values from the board. We are going to remove any colors. So if we had changed the background colors, we're going to remove it. We're going to clear the word guess array. We are going to reset the current word to, that function sets the current word to an empty array. And we're going to change the game active status to true. So basically this is if you've won a game, if you lost a game, you want to play again, you'll hit the play button, it clears the board, and it's ready to play a new game. So that's what that's going to do. So we can test that out. So here I'm going to come to the board and I'll guess feels. That's not the word. We know the word is tears, so I'm going to go ahead and guess that one. I've won. So I've won the game. If I push play, it clears the board and I can start over. And just to check that it's brand new, you can see that the array is empty again except for that new word that we've guessed. And if I push play again, I can start over. So that is working as expected. The next item, what we want to do is we want to set up this game board so that this works. So to do this, we're going to create a few more variables. These two, games won display and games lost display, are just basically selecting the div tags where this text is. And then these variables, games won is games lost, is the actual numbers here. So we're going to keep track of that. So then we're going to go down here. We've got a function already created called check game. And so we're going to update this function. So taking a look at this, here's the updated function. It looks like we've updated a lot, but I'm just going to walk through this. So what we've done here is we've added a new function call here to update score. So we'll talk about that function in a second, but I do want to call it that we have updated the games won variable. So in this part of the if the words match, they've won the game. So we want to update the number for games won to 1. Update score is going to update the actual display here. And we're going to update our alert. So it shows that we've won and what the actual word was. So that's what's going on here. Second else if is if the guess is wrong, but they still have more guesses left. So if the word's guess length is less than 5, then they can continue playing. So that's what this is doing. This else if is if the word's guess length is equal to 5, then this means this is their last guess. So what we're going to do is if the last guess is the game word, then they've won. We want to do the same thing. We're making it all green. We're updating the game's won. We're updating the score. We're doing to the screen. If the last guess is wrong, then the game is lost. So then we want to update the game lost variable, update the score, and then have a different alert saying this wasn't given our guesses, it's the wrong word, and then showing the word there. And the game will not be active anymore, and we'll return that back to the checking where we've called this function. We'll return false. So what we need to do now is we need this update score function, which I'm going to put right here. So in this function, what we're doing is the game won display and the game lost display, which are the new variables that we created up here. We're just going to go ahead when this function is called, we're just going to update the HTML here, the inner text here. So it's basically, we know it's a strong, it's it's in bold, right? So strong. Games won, and then this is just going to be the actual number, the same for games lost. So that's what that function does. So with all this should be working. So if we play a game, and let's just go ahead and win right away. Tears is the word. I spelled it wrong. Great. So we're going to put it in correctly. We've won the game. It turns green. Games won is won. So if we play again, and we're going to lose. So I'm just going to put in some random letters here to quickly lose. All right, we've lost, no more guesses. The word was tears, and you can see game's loss has been updated. So now the game board is working, and we'll move on to the next step. All right, we're almost done. We've just got one more thing we want to do, and we want to, instead of hard coding the word to tears, we want to set up a word list and some functionality to get a new word every time we play. So to do this, what we're going to do is I'm just going to enter here a word list, an array of words, right? This is just an example for a small project. So I think there's about 15 or 16 words in here, and this is just for a small test for this project that we're doing. If you really want to, you can try importing a file, the word list. You can also try importing a dictionary so we can check that the words entered by the user are all valid words, but we're not doing that today. It's outside the scope of the project. For now, we're just going to look at this array. This is our word list, right? So what we have to do next is we don't want our game word to be tears anymore. We're going to set it to an empty string for now, and then we'll pull a word from the word list to be the game word as we move forward. The next thing we want to do is this game active flag. So we're going to set this to false, and then what we want to do is once the users push this play button, it'll be true and it'll set the game word. So that's what we're going to work on right now. Since we've made this game active false, we do want to do some updates to this enter letter function to allow us to only allow users to enter the letter if the game is active. So what we're going to do is we're going to update this function like this. So basically it's checking if the game is active, and then it'll allow users to enter their letters onto the screen. If it's not active, then we're going to set up an alert that tells the users that they need to push the play button to start. So now that that's set up, we're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom here where we have our new game function that we just created recently, and we want to update this function to trigger a new function where we're going to set the game word. So let's create this new function, set game word. What it's going to do is we're going to use the math.random and the math.floor functions or methods in order to generate a random number. So we want a random number from 0 to 15, I believe, which will be the index of one of the words in this word array that we've just created. So that's what that's doing. The game word is going to be set to, one of the random words there. So we're just going to use a random number to select an index from the word list. That's going to be the word. And then we're also going to use the toUpperCase method because all the letters that the users are inputting are going to be uppercase in order to effectively compare those. We want the game word to also be in uppercase. So for now, we're going to console.log the game word to the screen so we can see what it is for testing. And this function is going to return the game word function. So with this, everything should be working. So let's save this and test it out. So if I try to go in here and just start playing, we get the alert successfully saying that we have to push the play button to start. So if we go down here, we push play. Okay, it's generated a word from our word array, frock. You can see it's in all uppercase. So if I try to play, let's do tears. And it's working, it's got the yellow. If I put the game word in here, frock, it knows that we've won the game. It's all green, and the scoreboard's still working. So that's our project. We set it up. This is a working game of Wordle. Is a pretty good project for us to learn about event listeners, setting up these different functions, different methods. We've got the random, we've got toUpperCase. We're using query selectors, arrays, for each loops, for loops, if else. So when I started this project, I had just watched a tutorial video about JavaScript, and really throughout the development of this project, I really learned a lot. I hope that in sharing this with you, you've also learned a lot. If you're interested in this project, like I mentioned earlier, link in the description to the app if you want to play around with it. Link in the description to the GitHub project where I've uploaded a README file with basically step-by-step what I've just done in this video. If you found this video helpful, or if you have any comments for me, feel free to subscribe. That would be great. Feel free to drop a like, drop a comment. See you next week with the next video. Thanks, everyone.